Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, April 26, 2016. Janet tells me we're at 7:07 p.m. I'd ask everyone to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, Ms. Sherby. Would you please call the roll?
Trustee Celestino.
Present.
Trustee Calcagno.
Present.
Trustee Perry.
Present.
Trustee Rita.
Present.
Trustee Stecker.
Present.
Trustee Yorkovich.
Present.
President Booth.
Present. We do have a quorum. Thank you, everybody, for coming this evening. Our next item under number 4 is a public hearing. We have two listed: annual budget for the fiscal year beginning May 1, 2016, ending April 30th, 2017. And item B, petitioner's appeal of the Village Zoning Board of Appeals denial of a special use permit for the construction of a cell tower at Mayfair Park. And following that, if the board would so endure, I'd like to add a little public comment. Make it 4C or whatever. Under public comment before we go into the presentation.
Do you want to move public comment from its normal position on the agenda up to 4C?
That would be,
And then not have additional public comment at the end of the meeting?
that's fine.
Okay.
So, okay, Michael.
With respect to item A, the village is required by law to pass a budget prior to the commencement of its fiscal year, which in this case is May 1st, 2016, and the fiscal year ends April 30th, 2017. By law, the village was required to publish notice of this public hearing, and I would note for the record that notice of this public hearing was published in the Suburban Life on April 6th, 2016. The public is invited to make oral comments at this public hearing, or also to submit written testimony with regard to the tentative budget that has been made available since its publication in the newspaper. I would ask the village clerk if you've received any written comments on the tentative budget. Having received no written comments, then it would be appropriate to ask if any members of the audience wish to speak with regard to the village's tentative budget. Seeing that there is no public comment with regard to the tentative budget, I would ask that the village president entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing on the village's annual budget for fiscal year May 1, 2016, ending April 30th, 2017.
Motion by
So moved.
Tommy, second by
Second.
Frank. Roll call.
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Celestino.
Aye.
Trustee Calcagno.
Aye.
Trustee Perry.
Aye.
Trustee Rita.
Aye.
Trustee Stecker.
Aye.
Trustee Yorkovich.
Aye.
President Booth.
Aye, motion carries. Item number B under public hearing.
The next matter concerns an appeal that was filed by the petitioner Dolan Realty Advisors, LLC. A application was filed by the petitioner to construct a cell tower. That petition was amended with revised plans submitted to the village on or about January 19th, 2016. On February 9th, 2016, the village board, meeting as a committee of the whole, remanded the revised petition to the Plan Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeal for a joint public hearing. On March 21st, a joint public hearing was held by the Plan Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. At that public hearing, the Zoning Board of Appeals voted to deny the application of the petitioner for the cell tower, which under its revised plans was proposed to be at a height of 90 feet. Pursuant to the village's zoning ordinance, the petitioner has filed a notice with the village manager seeking to appeal to the village board the denial of the special use by the village's zoning board of appeals. And that is what we have before us this evening. The appeal can commence with the petitioner. If counsel for the petitioners here, if you'd like to step forward and make your presentation of your appeal to the village board, please.
Thank you, Mr. Durkin. One, just clarification. Yeah, my name is Michael Vogt, V-O-G-T. I'm an attorney on behalf of the petitioner. Been before this board previously when they were sitting as a committee of the whole and appeared before your Plan Commission and now your Zoning Board of Appeals. One thing I wanted to clarify, well, obviously I agree that we are here for the appeal from the Zoning Board of Appeals decision. Am I correct also that the board tonight will be essentially making its final decision on the application? My understanding was that the Plan Commission on March 21st made a recommendation, which the board will now consider tonight in making its final decision on the application, as well as hearing the appeal from the ZBA.
Yes, there are two matters regarding the special use that appear on the village's active agenda portion. One is the village has to act upon the recommendation of the Plan Commission with regard to their recommendation to deny the special use. The second matter, which appears, I believe, as item 7C, is to entertain a motion with regard to the appeal as to which this hearing pertains. So this hearing doesn't actually directly deal with the Plan Commission's recommendation, although they're very much linked together.
Okay. And then with your approval, then I would, to be efficient, I would, in my opening remarks, address both matters if that suits the board.
Fine.
Thank you. As counsel for the village just indicated, we are here tonight to address a couple of procedural matters. But in short, tonight is really the village's final opportunity to approve the proposed cell tower at Mayfair Park under the procedures of the ordinance. Now, Verizon's coverage issues in and around Mayfair Park are undeniably well documented. You don't have to take my word for it. You can ask the question of your own police department and first responders. At the March 21st hearing, I began my opening remarks by reading a section from a letter that was drafted by Greg Riebel, the village's IT manager, IT and communications manager. And I'd like to start my comments the same way this evening because I feel that the importance of those statements from members of your own village police department and communications office can't be overstated. On November 20th, 2015, Mr. Riebel wrote, "The police patrol vehicle laptops, as well as the fire department vehicles, use Verizon service for internet communications, connection to our records management system, and to transmit specific data back to our village hall servers." He goes on to say, "The Westchester Police Department has been in communications with Verizon support on multiple occasions between 2011 and 2015 regarding coverage issues that we had discovered in various locations around Westchester." He continues, "The conversations escalated this summer, that being the summer of 2015, when speaking directly with a person from Verizon's government unit and outlining the public safety needs of Westchester and the shortcomings of the Verizon network in the municipality." He then outlined specific geographic parameters where these problems were most significant. We've submitted documentation to the board, which is essentially a Google Earth imagery with that area outlined in red. He closes his letter with the following: "It is my position, which has been backed by the Chief of Police and the Deputy Chief, that a tower installation in the area of Mayfair Park would provide the required coverage for village emergency vehicles and cellular phone users south of Windsor Drive, which has been lacking quality service for many years." Due to the influx of homeowners disconnecting their home phone service and relying primarily on cellular telephone service as their means of communication, both for voice and data, this tower should be welcomed by the residents as well as the visitors of our community. Now, the issues identified in Mr. Riebel's letter are not theoretical. These are very real issues that present very real potential for danger. Furthermore, these issues and very serious problems will not get better on their own. In fact, without action by Verizon to improve its network coverage in the area, service and coverage will continue to deteriorate with the addition of every phone, tablet, and hotspot that's brought into the area. Now, with these kind of well-documented network problems, what Verizon does is they go to their engineers and they say, what do we need to do to fix it? We have customers complaining. We have first responders in the village of Westchester unable to use and receive and transmit data from their laptops in their patrol vehicles. The engineers explain to them where the solution needs to come and in what form it needs to come. And that's exactly what happened here. With a search ring, which was created by the technical instrumentation of Verizon's engineers, Dolan Realty then sought out in the village of Westchester to find a suitable location. The first order of business, as it always is to try and find a place to co-locate either on an existing structure or tower. That's both because that's what's required under the ordinance and because it's significantly cheaper to co-locate on an existing structure than it is to build a brand new tower. And obviously, as a commercial enterprise, Verizon does not take the decision to build a new tower lightly, and when it's possible, it avoids that decision. Now here, as reflected in our application materials and the supplemental materials we gave in January, there were no viable co-location opportunities. So with that, Dolan set out to find a willing landlord whose property also would meet the coverage objectives for Verizon and, as best as possible, the zoning requirements for the village of Westchester. Several locations, in addition to Mayfair Park, were considered and ultimately ruled out. And at the Plan Commission and ZBA hearing on March 21st, certain locations were proposed by the members of the commission and of the zoning board, specifically the Forest Preserve, which encompasses a large area around the village of Westchester. The simple fact is that there are no cell tower leases in any forest preserve in Cook County, and as of now, that is not a feasible possibility. This is not an action of eminent domain. The only way we can locate on a property is if we have a willing landlord, and the fact of the matter is the park reserve is not an option at this point for providers. There's also a shopping center mentioned at the corner of Wolf and 31st. We did approach the owner of that lot. He was not interested. At the beginning, the only interest he expressed was to put a tower potentially at the very back corner of his property, which would have been, I believe, approximately 75 feet from a residential home, and would not have met any of the setback requirements or separation distance requirements under the ordinance. And then ultimately that landlord decided he wasn't interested at all, and we had to move on from that site. So the Dolan Realty continues out in the village of Westchester, searching for a viable property. And one of the things they do is they look at existing towers within the village to see what's previously been approved. Well, in this case, as the board is aware, there is currently a tower that's been approved and constructed at the Park District Community Center. So they look at that tower, same landlord as Mayfair Park, so they say, okay, maybe Park District would be a willing landlord. Turns out that they are. Then they look at the actual specific characteristics of that property at the community center, and they see that it's also zoned R1 residential, just like Mayfair Park. There's a monopole tower design. This is also going to be a monopole tower design. And the best part, they were able to situate a tower in Mayfair that's actually farther from any residential structures than the one that's already been constructed in the community center. So kind of with that as the backdrop for the need for the facility and the due diligence that went into locating a suitable property for the facility, our application was filed in October, And as the board is aware, we've had two full lengthy public meetings, as well as two discussions before the committee of the whole, and which leads us to this evening's meeting and public hearing. Now, at that March 31st joint hearing, the Planning Commission voted to recommend denial of the application, and as was indicated by Village Council, the Zoning Board of Appeals actually voted to deny the application. Since that hearing, a staff report was prepared which kind of purported to summarize the discussions that evening and the votes of the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals, and also the quote-unquote findings of both of those bodies. However, upon reviewing the staff report and the purported findings of both boards, they simply did not reflect the actual comments of the Plan Commission or the Zoning Board of Appeals that evening. And I'd like to actually just take a moment, because with regard to the Plan Commission vote, we had a vote of 4 members in favor of recommending denial, 1 member in favor of recommending approval. With regard to Plan Commission member Cross, in explaining his basis for voting to deny or to recommend denial of the application, he said, quote, "If the Forest Preserve won't let us do it, I think we should hold our village parks, our green space, to the same standard. And if they won't allow it for whatever reason, I think we should follow the same standards. And that's the reason I'm voting no, or I'm voting to deny." Now, Mr. Cross is certainly entitled to his own opinion, but the simple fact of the matter is that this board, the Plan Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, are all bound to follow the standards set forth in the ordinance. And simply because he would prefer to apply whatever standards the Forest Preserve applies, that is not a finding of any relevance under the criteria that's articulated under the ordinance. And it's most certainly not based on any evidence that's been submitted in the record in this matter. With regard to Plan Commission member, I apologize for mispronouncing, Mazze, M-A-Z-Z-E-I. That member made no substantive questions or comments whatsoever during the hearing. Ultimately voted to deny, but we have no understanding of the rationale behind that decision. So yet again, no significant findings by member Mazze. As for Plan Commission member Dent, Mr. Dent was actively engaged in the hearing. He asked multiple questions regarding the applicant's due diligence and specific plans proposed for Mayfair Park. However, when it came time to vote, he did not make any affirmative statements as to the basis for his vote or any underlying rationale or findings. As finally, for the final member who voted to recommend denial, Plan Commission member Smith, she had questions for Ms. Headley with regard to how she reached her conclusions that our application had met all of the criteria under the special land use ordinance. And specifically, she wanted to know how the application satisfied the general welfare and morals of the village residents. Well, the basis for her finding that it did not satisfy that standard was that the village residents were, quote, here and very, were, quote, here and very vocal, close quote. Now, I understand that we had a lot of residents here that night voicing their concerns, voicing them very loudly, very passionately. And Ms. Smith is certainly, again, entitled to her opinion. But the simple fact of the matter is, those opinions and generalized opposition to the tower are not substantial evidence with regard to that standard under the ordinance. So, in short, when it comes to the Plan Commission's recommendation, while that is under the ordinance something the board is obligated to consider, the board is also obligated to consider the underpinning of that recommendation. And that underpinning is not based on substantial evidence that's in the written record that's now before this board. And before I briefly discuss the ZBA's decision, I wanted to note the staff report's purported findings of the Plan Commission. Despite the very sparse rationale provided by the Plan Commission members, The staff report alleged the following findings. That the petition says the PC found that the petitioner did not conduct adequate due diligence and that all options had not been exhausted in finding the proper location of the cell tower, other than the proposed park, specifying the shopping center, the gas station, and the forest preserve area. Now, those are all areas that were discussed at the meeting. The transcript reflects that. But to say that any of those individual members voted upon making a finding that we had inadequately conducted due diligence to find a proper site for the proposed facility is simply not what's reflected in the record. The next purported finding was that, quote, the proposed cell tower is aesthetically unpleasing in the proposed location and negatively impacts and fails to complement the park and the community. Again, village residents were here that night, and there were generalized concerns and opinions that this would be unsightly or aesthetically unpleasing. But the simple fact of the matter is that subjective opinions of aesthetics, again, are not substantial evidence upon which a denial can be based. And moreover, the aesthetics of the proposed facility are remarkably similar to the aesthetics of the currently existing facility at the Park District Community Center. They'll be similarly fenced, similarly screened, similarly a monopole design, similarly have external equipment cabinets. The differences are very minimal between the two sites. The next proposed finding from the staff report is that, quote, the park is a location utilized by people and children. Divine Providence School is located 100 feet from the proposed cell tower. The proposed cell tower poses a safety risk to the children utilizing the park area. Parents could no longer allow their kids to run freely in the park with the cell tower structure in the proposed location. In addition, this cell tower would require construction and maintenance, which would also pose a hazard to the residents of the park. With regard to the last part, any construction, any maintenance, as we've explained in the record and in writing, would be done absolutely pursuant to all regulations, building codes, be it local or state, federal, or otherwise. As for the fact that the assertion that children could no longer run in the park, the proposed fenced-off area for the leased space is 3,033 square feet. That is precisely 0.04% of the now available space within Mayfair Park. Put differently, the village residents and their children will still have 99.96% of the existing park to utilize. And moreover, these comments were all made by residents and questions were asked from the members. But again, these were not findings. There was no conclusions met that underpinned the decision to vote for recommendation of denial. The next proposed finding was that the, quote, the proposed cell tower restricts access and use of the park and will impede access and use of the park for concerts in the park. Again, that was not a finding. That was a question. That was a concern raised. And as I think the response to the previous purported finding applies. Again, the leased area is 0.04% of the park, leaving 99.96% of the park free for utilization by the residents, whether it be for events or just for recreation. The next purported finding, this relates back to Mr. Cross's comments. This is the finding. Green space of the park should be preserved. If the Forest Preserve District would not permit this use on their properties, the same standards should be followed by the village for green space. If the Forest Preserve District holds 1 million acres of parkland and would not allow a cell tower, why should the village? Now, for many reasons, this is not a finding. It is also not a basis upon which a denial could be granted. And most alarmingly, it is a finding, or a purported finding, based on standards that are not articulated under your ordinance, but which a park preserve applies to its acreage. Standards which were not discussed or identified, just the simple fact that if they wouldn't allow it, well then that's what we should do, because that would enable us not to allow it. That was essentially the rationale of that finding, which in the staff report was purportedly a basis for recommending denial of the application. The next finding, the proposed cell tower will eliminate 3,000 square feet of park land that will no longer be available for use and enjoyment by the residents. That is the one finding that is accurate. There will be 3,033 square feet fenced off with security fencing around it that will no longer be utilized as park space. It will be utilized for a wireless communication facility. Again, leaving the overwhelming majority of the park undisturbed and usable. And the final finding was that, quote, there is a negative impact on public health, comfort, and general welfare due to the fact that people will no longer be able to use and enjoy the park in the same manner as evidenced by expressed concern of the residents. I don't need to reiterate all the things I just said, but as far as safety and general welfare go, your police department, and backed by the then chief of police, indicated that this tower is necessary. It's a need. It's a need that's not going away. It's a need that's existed since 2011. Maybe before that, but at least that's when he indicates he first brought it up to Verizon. Now, that concludes all of the purported findings that were listed in the staff report. In reading them in their totality, in concert with the actual comments from the Plan Commission, and upon reading the actual full transcript, which I know is now part of the record and has been provided to the board, it's evident that the recommendation for denial, while it needs to be considered, it should be considered very narrowly, and a great amount of weight should not be afforded to it. And this board should use its own independent analysis of the record that's before it, that's been submitted in writing, starting way back in October, and leading all the way up through tonight's meeting. With regard to the criteria that the Plan Commission was considering for recommending approval or denial of the special land use, your village staff on multiple occasions now has issued staff reports that painstakingly go through each and every one of their criteria and indicate in each of these staff reports how each and every one of those criterion has been satisfied. That is substantial evidence. That is tasking someone on your staff to investigate this application in light of the standards that this village and this board has adopted under its ordinance. And that's what this board should consider when it considers the petitioner's application for a special land use permit tonight. Now, with regard to the Zoning Board of Appeals decision to deny, we are left with, let's say, similar reasoning with regard to their decision. Quickly, again, I want to go through the rationale that was provided or not provided for the ZBA's vote to deny the application. ZBA member Voro says, quote, "In this day and age, these children that are sitting in the house playing with these computers and playing with these games and stuff, we need these kids to be outside playing ball, playing basketball, playing hockey, not to be stuck in the house. And if we are denying them this right because we're having this unit put up in the park, I am not for it." That was Mr. Varel's rationale for voting to deny the application. You can search through the ordinance. You'll never find anything in there with regard to criteria related to personal opinions on whether children should be playing video games or should be outside running in the park. Again, Mr. Varel is, of course, entitled to his opinion on technology and anything else for that matter. But for the purposes of what we're here to decide tonight, that opinion is not a valid basis for denial. And with regard to his vote, I would hope that the board would consider the rationale that was provided and find that his decision was not consistent with the standards articulated in the ordinance. ZBA member Sarno, Mr. Sarno asked questions during the hearing regarding lease terms at the park district and the coverage that would be provided by the proposed facility. but he made no specific findings and made no specific explanation for his vote to deny the application. Simply during the roll call, he voted no. ZBA member Pater explained her decision to vote no by saying, quote, "I am not in favor of it." Goes on to say, "If you have to fence something away from children, it's just not safe. So I am voting against it." Again, that sparse rationale that simply because something has a fence around it, it is categorically unsafe and cannot be approved is not found anywhere in the ordinance. As to ZBA member Hanson, in support of his vote to deny, he generally stated, quote, "I would like to see the dead zones get taken care of, but by some other way, somewhere else." That's it. That's what ZBA member Hanson offered in support of his vote to deny. Somewhat similarly, ZBA member McElway did not offer any evidence to support his vote to deny, but simply said that he, quote, "would really like to see everyone decide to come together and try to find something that we can all agree upon where this could be placed." That's the rationale for Mr. McElway's vote to deny. The one member of the ZBA who voted in favor, member Walters, explained their vote in favor of the application by saying, "I will vote for it primarily because I think it serves a vital function for the safety and welfare. All of the village, especially those living in the area, the police officers, and firemen need to be able to communicate, and I think it's vitally important for that." Now, of the five votes cast by the ZBA members, the one vote in favor of it, of the application, was the only vote that was explained by any supporting evidence in the record. Specifically, the November 20th, 2015 letter from Greg Griebel, which identified the very concerns upon which member Walters based their vote. So similarly to our request that the board just approve the application in contravention of the Plan Commission's recommendation, we would ask that the board grant the petitioner's appeal from the ZBA's decision, because the ZBA's decision is not consistent with the requirements of the ordinance. It's not based on any substantial evidence in the written record, and therefore the petitioner's appeal should be granted. Now, one small other matter to discuss. The ZBA voted not only on the application, but the village has interpreted the ordinance such that it believes a variance is required for the fence height of the security fencing that will surround the proposed facility. It's our interpretation and understanding of the ordinance that it should not be. There should be no variation required, simply for the fact that we have a little bit of an anomaly in the zoning ordinance in that the R1 residential district has a fence height limitation of 6 feet tall. But that section that provides that limitation starts with the language, quote, "except as hereinafter provided," close quote, meaning that that limitation is subject to whatever language may come later on in the ordinance. Well, the wireless section comes later on in the ordinance, and the wireless section establishes a minimum fence height of 6 feet. And if the intent of the ordinance, which I think everyone agrees is to serve the general welfare of the people, then the fence height minimum, when we're talking about security, should be applied, not the maximum. What we're proposing is 8 feet, 2 feet higher than the minimum. The village's interpretation has been that anything over 6 feet, we require a variation. So essentially, we disagree with that, but if a variation is required, we request that it be granted. And if it's not going to be granted, then we would simply reduce the height to 6 feet, which under the village's interpretation would be in compliance with the ordinance. But we believe all parties would be served by an 8-foot fence. But that's certainly something we could obviously lower it if that's really what the village wanted. With that, I'll close my opening remarks and simply request that all of the board members fulfill their obligations to completely review what's actually in the written record before casting votes tonight. Because the concerns and verbal opinions that have been raised at the public hearings, they're all valid opinions. And they can be valid concerns even. And everyone's entitled to those opinions and concerns. But the simple fact is that the law requires the decision of this board to be based on the substantial evidence that's been submitted in writing. And generalized concerns about aesthetics, property values, and all of the like that we've heard throughout these public hearings are simply not the type of substantial evidence upon which a vote can be, or I'm sorry, a decision on an application for special land use for a wireless facility can be based. And we're obviously here tonight. I have Mr. Duran from Dolan Realty. I have Shoab Nagy, who is an RF engineer from Verizon, and myself to answer any questions that the board may have with regard to the application or the proposed facility. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Melissa, if you wouldn't mind, could you go through what the ordinance requires?
In terms of each standard? Right.
Yes, the standards that,
I can go over the standards that were outlined in the staff report that was prepared for Plan Commission.
that's fine.
The first standard for the special use from Plan Commission is that the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the special use will not be unreasonably detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. The next standard is that the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. The third standard is that the establishment of the special use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. The next one is that adequate utilities, access roads, off-street parking, drainage, or other necessary facilities have been or are being provided. And the next standard is that adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress so designed as to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. And the last standard is that the special use shall in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it's located. And then there are specific factors to be considered by the Zoning Board of Appeals for granting special use permits for these towers. And the first standard is the height of the proposed tower, the proximity of the tower to residential structures and residential district boundaries, the nature of uses on adjacent and nearby properties, surrounding topography, surrounding tree coverage and foliage, design of the tower with particular reference to design characteristics that have the effect of reducing or eliminating visual obtrusiveness, proposed ingress and egress, and then the availability of suitable existing towers, other structures, or alternative technologies not requiring the use of towers or structures as discussed in subsection B3 of this section. And then finally, with regards to the standards for the variation for the fence height, those standards are that it's accompanied by a finding of fact specifying the reason for making the variation, namely the peculiar condition existing and the hardship or difficulty that it would cause, that it's accompanied by a finding that the variation is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the regulation in question, and finally it is accompanied by a finding that it will not materially increase street traffic or impair property values or be detrimental to the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. That's it. Those are the standards.
And based on your staff report and the information that you supplied us, that the cell tower meets all those, or there was an issue that you found in regards to having the tower in that location that would be negated as a result of your investigation?
Based on the information, when I prepared the staff report, I believe that it met the standards, with the exception of, at the time that the report was prepared, I didn't have anything on a practical difficulty or hardship for the fence height.
Okay, I know at the original hearing back on, was that January when we had the first
The first public hearing?
meeting, wasn't that November?
It was November 23rd.
November 23rd. I know I approached the board that was sitting, the plan commission at that time, and indicated that I certainly was well aware of the dead zone as a police officer and 911 coordinator back when I served. I also indicated that there was another site on top of our tower that was vacated, and I didn't believe, and I will certainly agree with you, sir, that certainly growing up in town to have a cell tower in the middle of the park is not a aesthetic thing under anybody's standard. And I suggested that an alternate location possibly be looked at, and if so deemed to be placed, that we try to kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. Since that time, I've been doing a number of research, both for and against cell towers and what other communities have been doing, and certainly, those opinions regarding RF and the prohibition under the 1996 Telecommunications Act, that cannot be certainly a basis for a denial. As I looked at the coverage area, and I guess if I'm not mistaken, this red ring is what would be added, that would be fixed. I mean, I think these are your maps. It's difficult for me to make heads or tails out of the unreliable service in the house, outside of the house, but is this pretty much the ring of better coverage that's not being covered right now? Is that?
So that the image that you're holding in your hand now is an aerial image, and then obviously the other one is the village's zoning map. But neither of those are the propagation maps, which depict the coverage gap. So our radio frequency engineer, Shoaib Nagy, is here, and he could explain that better than I could.
But can we get your name for the record, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Dan Duren. Last name is Duehren.
Thank you.
So these are the maps that show what's not being covered. It's difficult to read the street names on here, but this is what we have here. We've got reliable in residence, unreliable in residence, reliable in vehicle, unreliable in vehicle, reliable pretty much on street. So, and maybe somebody can answer this that's a technical wizard, that if it's reliable in residence, does that necessarily mean it's reliable in vehicle in front of that residence? Yes? No?
So on the street, that's, I'm sorry, it's Shoaib, Shoaib. Nagi. So the in residence is also, it's like in building, which is the best coverage. The next level would be unreliable in building or in residence, which is it is still better than reliable vehicle in vehicle or on state, but the in building could be degraded, and that's what the light blue is.
I mean, there seems to be, to me, if you're putting up a tower, that the coverage area would be far more substantial than it is. Because as I'm looking at this, just general geographics, if the tower goes up, that you've enhanced service probably to about Sunnyside, maybe Fleet, maybe down the Carlisle, and that's about it.
Yes.
So Stratford and Somerset and even a little bit further, which isn't that far away from Manheim Road, would still have poor coverage. Is
So
that
these are-
basically what I'm reading here?
Yeah, so these are based on RF propagation. So what we do is we have a prediction tool in which we set the parameter values of what type of cell tower it's gonna be. And then based on the clutter, like what actually exists in that area, trees, buildings, if it's open air, it predicts how the signal is gonna be propagating through the area. So based on that, if the area is open, it's gonna propagate farther. If there are obstructions, the coverage area is not gonna be that much. That's why you see the variation on different sites.
Because subsequent to the last meeting and that, I went online, and I'm told from the police department, which I certainly have faith in them and what's happening, that they're not being able to communicate since they went to a Verizon wireless computer operation instead of a landline one, which we had before, that I found a booster and asked Greg to purchase one and put it in one of the squad cars and drive around in this area that they're having some communications trouble. And Greg could speak of this, but at the end of the day, we've had the same locations of the red light on the booster. That means the signal is weak or very poor. And then outside of that realm, the signal is green, and they're doing that, that it's able to communicate in the green, when we have the green signal on there. So there is an identifiable location. Now, with that, I saw something the other day from the Facebook guy that talks about putting different Wi-Fi stuff in the clouds or on different type of appliances. So I found something from Overland, Kansas, that they were putting an appliance on top of a telephone pole that would boost the signal and data throughout an affected area. And in fact, just prior to the meeting, in my conversation with Trustee Stecker, who is a firefighter in Franklin Park, that they've been adding these types of appliances to different telephone poles that is enhancing the signals so as you don't have to construct these towers. And in fact, I think as the technology goes further and further and further, you're probably going to see, and this is just my opinion, so everybody's clear on that, that you're not going to have these towers. You're going to have these RF boosters on certain poles in an affected area that has bad communication, that are really less intrusive than having an 80-foot pole, whether it's dressed up as a flag or a Christmas tree or something else. And as a matter of fact, I'm holding something from the Dolan Realty Advisors. Under small cells are deployed on utility poles or attached to buildings where the carrier requires additional capacity in sensitive areas. And it goes on to say, Dolan Realty Advisors led the first small cell deployment in the country in suburban St. Louis. An enhanced service with the right solution. Pre-engineer all sites with local utility. Understand the needs, guidelines, and regulations of the utility and the local municipality. So, based on what I'm seeing here, I think that if you shift gears and put these little things on telephone poles that you get some permission from ComEd to do, or if you construct a pole in some type of easement that we may have some type of ability to put in, that a few of these small things in that affected area, which is really small potatoes as compared to our whole town, will do exactly what some of the commissioners indicated, that we can get communication. If, to be quite honest with you, if Greg Riebel would have told me tonight that the little box that we bought was working just fine, the point of the staff report would have became moot, because that was the reason that we've even entertained the phone call to Verizon in the first place, because we had poor communication service for emergency services, which I think everyone would agree is paramount to make sure that first responders get to where they're at. So, what I would suggest is either some information from somebody that these small cell situations can be placed in that affected area and the number of them, and then we can actually fix our problem, which actually fixes everybody's problem that's out there, with the exception of the Park District getting X amount of dollars for whatever they want to do, and certainly your client from selling off other spaces on the pole to make money. So, everybody, please, this is, we're a professional group here. I appreciate the applause, but what Mr. Vogt said is, this is fact-based, this can't be emotional, and I would respect that piece of that. So what I'm suggesting, and you know, based on what I know right now, I would think that there is a better way to accomplish both goals, because in a sense, every one of those commissioners were appointed by me, who are regular people who live in the village of Westchester, and most of them, like me, have a lot of tenure here. And we like the town the way it is. And there's so much unknown, even though the Act of '96, and I could cite studies from across the seas in Canada and Germany and all these other things. And honestly, that has an effect on your head. And it should, on everybody's head, of the fear of the unknown. And who's Congress, to be quite honest with you, to say that there's no effect of anything medically, when really they don't know their ass from page 8. In all honesty, look at Congress, the worst popularity ever. They've screwed everything up from A to Z. So nobody trusts them, but I think the people in this audience trust us to make the right decision. And I'm sure, and I'm not an attorney, I'm a cop, but I'm married to an attorney. And I'm certain that when you would sue us for us to go to court, and you explain everything you do to some judicial panel, in my opinion, and that's all this is, they're going to say, you know what, there was more emotion than fact. Because we're real people that live every day the way we're supposed to. I don't know anyone here, and certainly not me, that want a cell tower close to them. Whether it's 300 feet, 1,500 feet, 1,000 feet, put it up in space. You know and I know we're bombarded from every bit of RF in a cell phone, in a microwave, in a smart meter, and you don't know the numbers. Is it 1 watt per megahertz per body mass tissue? I don't know. But there's some real fear out here, and fear of the unknown. And I think that since the company has on our website something that could help us realize that we can put these up and accomplish our goal for the greater good of everybody, I'd like to explore that. And I know you looked at the tower, as I suggested, and it's too far away. I get it. you know? So, I don't know if we're prepared to vote at some point in time. We're certainly gonna hear from the public. I know what we're gonna hear. We're gonna hear the same things that you heard, and I've heard it now twice. But I'm a kind of guy that does research. I know how many antennas are here. I know where the towers are at. I know that there's some kind of antenna in Divine Providence. I know there's one in Divine Infant. I know there was something at the community church at one point in time. I know these things are everywhere. But when they're hidden, and they're probably as lower voltage than having a big one 80 feet up with 4 different heads on it. But there are some alternatives to this with nano things on poles. I've been researching for weeks here about different things that we can do to make us feel good and to make it work, which I think is the primary goal here, instead of having a tower in center field that, quite frankly, I don't think you'd like to have it if you lived on Kingston looking at it. I know I wouldn't. So, but that's emotion and that's opinion. So,
President Puglia, of course, your opinions are respected, and you're more than entitled to them, as are the rest of the board and the residents in the village. With regard to the small cell technology, or the small nanos, or however you describe them, I won't pretend to be an expert in that area, and I'll defer to the RF engineer when it comes to that. One thing I do know, though, and I don't know the specifications of what was referred to on Dolan's website either in St. Louis, but what I do know is that with each and every one of these cellular service zoning or siting matters, they're all incredibly factually specific, tailored to the issues that the coverage is facing, as well as the local topography and population density, and a number of factors that I probably wouldn't even be able to articulate, but an engineer could. So the simple fact that one solution works in one place, I can tell you with certainty that it doesn't necessarily mean it'll work in another place. I know that with regard to the fears of the unknown, I certainly respect and understand, anyone's fear with regard to health and safety. But, and I understand, I got the indication that, not the indication, based on exactly what you said, that, your faith isn't in the, the federal government to make those determinations as to what's safe and what isn't. But, and that you simply just don't want the tower in the park or in your general vicinity. The reason that legislation was enacted, in part, is because those are the sentiments of just about every community and many, many, many residents throughout the country. But Congress, for better or worse, determined that the expansion of the wireless voice and data network throughout our country was imperative, and for that reason, they set standards in place and put limitations on local municipalities, which prevent them from adopting the what's known for short as NIMBY, not in my backyard mentality, because they've valued the needed service for our country's infrastructure, and then of course had it evaluated by scientists and engineers with regard to safety concerns, and then set standards as they do in almost every other realm of our life as to what meets government's standards for safety. And that's all part of the framework, the regulatory framework that binds this board, this village, this state, and the country as a whole. So while I can appreciate the board's concerns and your individual concerns and all of the residents' concerns with regard to the logic or rationale behind the Telecommunications Act, the simple fact is that it's the law of the land. And whether an individual is happy with the way the law is stated or the impact of the law, we as individual citizens and as elected board officials aren't granted the discretion under the law to decide when and where it should apply. And in this case, while we are simply trying to address the need that you've described in great detail with regard to both in-home coverage and the coverage for first responders. With that, if you have any specific questions about alternative technology that you want to ask the engineer, you're obviously more than welcome to do so. He will be able to answer your questions in that vein much better than I ever could.
Okay, I mean, the only caveat I would say to your comments is this. In 1996, they weren't talking about some Mount Yagi directional antennas or these small boxes or these things on top of poles. They probably did not exist, or they were just in the testing phase of whatever. And I'll tell you this, to be honest, and transparent. In 2009, there was a company that came before the Plan Commission, and there was not one negative person at all that came here to place a similar tower, like a flagpole, in Mayfair Park, but more toward the retention pond adjacent to the parking lot. And there was not one negative comment, and the board unanimously approved that to be done in 2009. I think the company went belly up or whatever happened, and nothing ever transpired with that. So, I mean, that's the open communication. But that's 2009, and now we're at 16, and everybody is wondering about all these new technological advances. I mean, they had Atari and Pac-Man back then in '96, okay? I was holding on to a brick phone. It's some time now. But now you have all these innovative technological advances that certainly we would want to avail ourselves with if we didn't have to have the tower to get it to work, if you know what I mean.
I know,
So,
I understand.
again, I mean, if the engineer is here, or someone that knows a little bit about this, I mean, we're proffering this, and didn't mean to shove it down your throat, so to speak, but it's got Dolan's name on it as a possible alternative to fix problems. And I'm looking at such a small area of problem that you're talking about here, from Fleet Street to Sunnyside to Carlisle to Mayfair or Boger. That's a small footprint. And I'm certain that, not that I'm a wizard in technologically speaking, because I'm not, but I'm thinking that putting some of these appliances up, I'd love to test them and put them up to see if the data works, just like I did with the box that Greg bought. I mean, I have no issue with that. My job is to make sure that it works for the residents, not to make the Park District money or not to take money out of your pockets, so to speak, because you are representing certain people. I get it. My job is to make sure that my town is safe, that the communication goes back and forth, and to the best of my ability, that the 16,718 smiling faces are smiling at the end of the day. And I know I can't make everybody happy, but there may be an alternative that's not explored here that would satisfy the goals and needs of us.
With regard to the possible alternative, as you put it, I can't speak to the scientific measurables of the smaller units that go on top of maybe light poles or distribution electricity poles on the side of the road. But I also do represent utilities as part of my practice, and I can tell you that the utilities are very frequently unwelcoming of guests on their poles and towers. And as you know, these proceedings are not an eminent domain matter where we can simply just come in and put a tower up wherever we please. And in that regard, we need a willing landlord. And I have been on both sides of that coin, working for cell provider or representing utility. And I can tell you that it's very difficult to obtain permission to locate on a utility line. And then if it is obtained, there are very significant obstacles to maintaining and repairing, because obviously as just a tenant, you are at the whim of whatever terms the landlord will agree to. And with that, we find we have great difficulties with access, maintenance, repair. I can't speak to the technical aspects of them. I can speak to the real world applications of getting them on those towers. And I know based on previous matters and discussions with Mr. Nagy that they can't just be thrown up anywhere. Obviously the tower was proposed here for a specific location. And if you were to try and add small cell units, not only is there the variable of finding a willing landlord, you have to find a willing landlord in the exact right locations. That's about as far as my scientific knowledge would go, but I know those are issues that we deal with on those type of technologies.
And I would counter that every ComEd pole is sitting on Village right-of-way Parkway. And if ComEd wouldn't allow that to happen, I would imagine that we could find an engineer who's schooled in this that could look at those four boundaries that I've mentioned and strategically put up poles on the Village right-of-way, and the only thing that we would have to do would be to make sure that they had power. So I don't think there's a right-of-way issue if ComEd, ComEd has AT&T on there, they got Comcast on there, they have everybody and their brother on them poles. So if they would tell us no, and I'll just say, we're putting 10 of these up for that coverage area, I would think that that would be something that they would entertain, or something that the village would look at to say, we need 10 of these, we need to crisscross them so the coverage is in there, or whatever the number would be, and then go forward. But I still think that that investigation needs to go forward before really we could competently, and I know you want us to vote tonight, that we could competently vote yes or no for this with that hanging piece out there. Did we do our due diligence? Is this the best for Westchester? And will this solve our problem? And I don't have an answer to that question. I open it up to the board. Is there some commentary?
I've got a couple of questions. I live on Newbury Street. I live just at the edge of that oval ring that you guys have outlined. I will still have poor service in my house, but I'll have better service outside of my house. I'm a lifelong customer of Verizon. I've been with Verizon as long as I could remember. About 3 years ago, I started calling them. What can I do for better service in my house? So, sir, you can buy this $200 device and attach it to your Wi-Fi in your house. I says, I pay for your service and I can't use it in my own home. I argued this for about a year and a half. Finally, about a year and a half ago, I caved. I bought the device, I plugged it in. Unbeknownst to me, not realizing that it cuts down on your bandwidth. So I have 5 people that live in my home, 3 kids, my wife. So if we're all trying to use our phone, it cuts down on the Wi-Fi, it kills the Wi-Fi. So I have to suffer, I have to give up one, something somewhere. I still won't get it, what you guys putting this pole up over there in my home. I'm at the very edge.
Are you talking about that red circle?
Yeah, that red circle.
I want to clarify one thing that on the aerial that you indicated earlier. That, I just spoke with Mr. Duran about it. That is, it was submitted essentially just as a demonstrative exhibit. That is not off of any computer. That's what they use in their search analysis, essentially. Here's our center point where it's pinned, and they're basically like, generally, anything we can find in this area
The one that I looked at is color coded.
This one here.
Okay.
Yeah, who's gonna get, what coverage and everything, and I'm outside, I'm in the outside coverage, I'll gain some outside coverage, but I won't gain it inside my home.
Okay.
So regardless, there's gotta be more residents than me that's gonna affect. Number 2, how many Verizon customers do you have within that circumference? Do you guys know? I mean, because you gotta know, because I get a bill to my home. So you gotta know how many cell phones, how many, customers out of that whole area that you actually have that use Verizon. The reason I ask is because I have two neighbors that went to AT&T because of the poor service with Verizon. AT&T, they have this great coverage now. They have good service there. They've been trying to talk me into it for the last year. I've been reluctant. I'm sticking it out, So, my point is, is our village equipment proprietary to Verizon? Or, we can use anybody? I mean, do we have to have Verizon? Do we have to have this better coverage and put these poles in for our emergency, equipment? I mean, maybe it's a question,
Yeah,
Greg, you have to.
Obviously, I will defer to you, Mr. Rebel, because I was going to cite the very letter you wrote in November, which talks about the contract.
Correct.
The 90-cent tour is that we used to have landline-based, which it would hit one of our
RF.
towers,
RF.
run to a landline, and then come back here and go whatever. It was an RFP with the Illinois State Police. Verizon got the contract. So all of the cell users, police departments, are utilizing Verizon as a result of the RFP through Central Management Services. Is that pretty much it, Greg? Okay.
So we have to use Verizon.
So that's where we're at.
For police, yes.
So, and just my last point, I know you kind of referred to the opinion of the residents having no merit because there's no data to back it. There's no factual findings or anything. But I gotta agree with President Puglia. The voice of our residents do matter. They do matter. They come to us and they elected us and they expect us to sit up here and make good decisions on their behalf. Not on our behalf, but on their behalf. So I gotta, that kind of just got in my crawl, almost hearing that, it means nothing. It does mean something.
Well, allow me to clarify that, please. Of course, I never said it doesn't mean anything. And actually, what I said that they're all entitled to their opinions, and that they should be able to voice them in a public forum like this to their elected officials. But what I pointed out was there's just a lot of judicial case law that arises out of these type of applications for wireless communication facilities. And in those cases, what the courts do is they look at what the approval or denial was based on. And not that these opinions don't have value in the colloquial sense of the word. Of course they do. Everyone's entitled to their opinions, and their opinions have value. The only point I was trying to make, and the only point I'm trying to make now, is that in the eyes of the law, which is where we are, this is a legal body formed under the ordinance and under the state constitution. In the eyes of the law, concerns about aesthetics that are subjective, no matter if they're voiced by many, many people or how loudly they're voiced, don't constitute specific substantial evidence. And that is what the law requires, and not just substantial evidence, but substantial evidence in a written record. And that's why I made that point. I just wanted to make it very clear the entire regulatory framework that's at play here. And I certainly did not mean any sort of disrespect towards the village or its residents.
Well, I certainly think we should entertain other options before we just go ahead. And I do agree. I don't think tonight's going to be the night that we sit here and vote on something without having all the information put to us. Maybe there's more information that we could get that would help us.
Carl, question?
Yeah, I just have a question regarding with the park board. They're the ones that are affording you this lease. Were you there when they voted on it?
I was not personally there.
Okay, but can you tell me what their vote was? Was it a unanimous vote to allow the leasing on their property? Because unfortunately, we haven't heard from anybody from the park board.
I wasn't involved.
I'd like to know what their vote was to approve this lease with Dunn.
Give me 1 second to address
Sure, thank you.
I was just gonna say, I mean, you hit it on the head, but in his own words, about this possibility.
Okay, this is based on comments from Mr. Duran.
Yes.
His recollection is that it was not unanimous. It was voted for by all members that were present except for the president of the park district. And I can't tell you which members were or were not there, but everyone voted yes except for the president.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Melissa.
One of the letters in opposition that was submitted regarding this petition,
Mhm.
it indicated the voting record. And I think we looked at the Park District's website and had confirmed it. But the indication in the written correspondence was that it was Commissioners Gordon, Martin, and Christopher that voted at the Park District. That voted to approve it at the Park District.
Okay, and then there was one vote, missing, okay.
Go ahead, Tommy.
Go ahead.
Would you entertain this thought? I think the board would like to do a little bit more investigation with engineers, and certainly need some more information from the Dolan Group regarding their appliance that's up there. And I know the clock is ticking for the 150 days, which will be somewhere in June, I guess, with all these filings and that. Would it be prudent to ask you for a stay until we can, 30, 60 days or whatever, so we could fully investigate some of these other alternatives that I've suggested to the board? You know, and if not, and you ask us and say no, you know, we'll go ahead and take the vote and then see where we want to be. So I'm asking you, as their attorney of record, do you have any objection for us to do a little bit more due diligence in regards to some of these other appliances of which your client may have, to satisfy the concerns that I've outlined this evening?
First, I will say, obviously, the board does not need my compliance to table or bring anything to a vote. Obviously, we've submitted the application requesting approval and necessarily then requesting a decision on the application. And with regard to the due diligence, which, you know, I understand everything you've said and the concerns with regard to exploring other options. But one of the facts is that this matter, as you indicated, has been pending before the village for quite some time. You know, I understand that we had supplemented our application in January, but the only thing that changed there was a reduction in tower height and a shrinking of the actual equipment area. So really, this proposal, in large part, has been before the village since October of 2015. And as indicated at the outset of President's remarks and questions from Ms. Headley, it's been established that the criteria that's articulated under the ordinance has been met by the application.
All I'm asking is, I don't want to be fall, and then at the 160th day, whatever we decided, we'll get preempted by the 150-day rule that, oh, so sad, you know, you erred on your time parameter. So, again, I can table this, you know, to a time certain, but it's not going to stop the clock. And that's what I'm asking you, is to stop the clock for a reasonable amount of time so we can do a little bit more. You know, every time there's a hearing or whatever, I've learned more in the last 2 months about cell towers than I ever want to know. But, you know, I don't want to say shame on me or shame on us that we didn't realize, because the Telecommunications Act was the guiding light of all this. And you can't touch it because you can't say no. There's no reason to say no. And these things are going up come heck or high water. And I think since that time, I've learned a whole lot more. And hopefully the board has educated themselves a little bit, maybe on my comments or the comments of the residents that were here over time, of their objections and the reasons why, and I'm asking for, if you grant us a 60-day stay of your 150-day window, so we can do something and look at that. And we're gonna contact this gentleman here. He'll give his card to Greg regarding Dolan and what they have and what appliances they have. We'll start checking out tomorrow ComEd. We'll start looking at that to look at that geographic area to say, is there a better way to do this and not have this monstrous 80-foot, 90-foot tower in the park? So that's what I'm asking. If you say it's not possible, I get it, we're gonna stick to the date. I get it, we're gonna move on and then do what we do, and then you do what you do.
I will, obviously, any requests that you articulate to me, I will take back to my client. I can tell you, though, standing here before you tonight, I have no authority from them whatsoever to waive any type of rights under the law, including any potential time limitations on the application.
Okay, well, we have a meeting on May 10th. So we're gonna table this until then. In the meantime, you can get a hold of counsel or Janet and let them know what the client says. And then in the meantime, we're going to go forward with what I've asked staff to do. And then come May 10th, if there's an additional time parameter that we're not shut off at the June date, we're gonna be working diligently, and then we'll kind of go from there. Anyone on the board have an issue with that problem? Anybody? Making sense to everyone? All right.
Just to be clear, we're going to table everything with regard to the application that was up tonight.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, we do need to vote on that. This is a legislative body. Somebody needs to make a motion, but I want to make sure that this appeal hearing and everything that needs to go into the record is completed. I think, counsel, do you have anything else you want to offer? Because I think there was some indication that you would entertain public comment on this.
Yes, well, that, when this gentleman's done, I was gonna ask for public hanging to the 3-minute rule. If there's some other comments that I missed or that I didn't hear, or anything that we need to offer.
Considering the fact that it sounds like we're not going to a final vote tonight, I don't see a real purpose in making any closing comments. I think I've addressed much of the issues we had with the Planning Commission's recommendation and the ZBA's decision, and just ask you to earnestly consider everything we've presented that's in the record.
And we certainly will, as you could tell.
Mr. Vogt, are you finished offering what you need to into the record of this village board meeting with regard to this appeal? Or are you entertaining the thought that on the 10th of May, you're going to return and supplement?
Well, I mean, if
I'm trying to get some clarity
Sure.
on that.
Well, I'm doing the same, the same, Counselor. Assuming the board was going to meet again on May 10th, and at that time make a vote with regard to all of the issues that are pending for the application, and that will of course be given an opportunity to be heard that evening and make any comments we have, because we don't know what's going to transpire between now and then.
Well, right, and what I've asked is that you're gonna go back to your representative and hopefully be in agreement to stay the 150 until we can do an investigation to see whether or not there's an opportunity to maybe use something else and have articulable facts and recommendations at that point in time that this will work, what I'm suggesting, or it will not work, and then go from there.
If that's the will of the board, obviously we are going along with the procedure of the board.
Well, I want to make sure that you're clear
I
in the
understand. I
reasons
do
we're
understand
asking
it.
for it, that's all.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
I do
what we're going to do is, at the May 10th meeting, instead of having another listing of a public hearing on this appeal, will the chair agree that before the vote is taken, if Mr. Vogt wants to offer commentary that evening, he'll be given an opportunity.
Yes, sir, he will.
Before the vote is taken.
Absolutely. There'll be
Is that acceptable?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
commentary as well. Great, okay.
We do need to take a vote.
For the table.
VOTE, with regard to tabling these items, but you're still in the process where you moved your public comment
Correct.
to this point.
So, if everyone understood what Mr. Durkin indicated, public comments, step up to the microphone, 3-minute warning, introduce yourself for our clerk, and if there's any information that you'd like to impart, great. If I said enough, then we'll close the public hearing and move on and see what we're at.
Just for the record, this is under the Open Meetings Act. This will be the public comment session. Anybody that wants to address the board with regard to this topic, certainly let's clear the decks on this topic. And then if there's any other public comment on any other matters, you'll entertain it at this time also. So anybody with respect to the cell tower appeal.
If you don't mind, that's this young lady's coming up now, up to the microphone. You could line up on that, I guess your left, my right.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm not sure, pardon? My name is Mary Ann Watts. I was here for the last meeting. I'm not sure if I'm in the right position here because are we talking about the cell tower now or are we talking about other issues?
The cell tower first, ma'am.
Cell tower first.
Well, I think I need to sit down.
Don't go too far, though. Anyone else that wants to
Cell
address
tower.
the board on the cell tower?
Good evening. My name is Bill Ostendorf. I live at 2901 Mayfair Avenue. I do certainly appreciate President Puglia's comments about let's get our due diligence done here. I think we have to, I'd like to see us call in some experts that are not related to the petitioner. And I think the cost of that should be borne by the petitioner. You know, another thing is that we've been talking about the flagpole at the community center versus a 90-foot tower at Mayfair Park. Two different animals. One looks like a flagpole, the other one looks like a clothes pole, like a clothes rack. I don't think aesthetics are subjective, like was said before. And I think that we might want to entertain the idea of using the poles around, the existing poles around the ball field are 60-footers already. Sitting right in place, they're there, put an extension on one of them might be a piece of cake, only have one tenant on the pole, and we're out of here. So those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you, fine sir.
Hello, I'm Carl Santucci, 2929 Beckett. And very interesting meeting tonight. I like the idea of, you know, the alternative little antennas or whatever you're proposing. That probably solved the problem, hopefully. The only question I have, I'm trying to get it through my thick skull as to how Gordon and the other two, Martin and whoever the other person was, Christopher, caused all of this problem. Because, I mean, the Park District, I guess, stands alone, is that what it is?
It's
They
a
can do
separate
whatever they
governing
want.
body, and although they have to, for building codes and things of that nature, they're a separate taxing body.
And what about like Busa, was he in on this too?
He's the no.
He's the no. So, and then Cassanders apparently did not vote.
He can't vote. He's the executive director. He's
Okay, so
in information.
basically we have three people that said, you know, go ahead, sign the lease, $1,900 a month, we're gonna make all kinds of money, and we don't care what the heck happens in Mayfair Park. I was at the one on Bond, I looked at it real carefully, it says antenna. Doesn't even say cell tower, it's an antenna. It's a big sign.
Yeah.
Beware, you know, and all that stuff. I guess what's the point? You know, why did this even happen? People don't want the thing in Mayfair Park. I mean, all my neighbors, I personally don't care. I mean, I care to a point, but, you know, I'm far enough away from it. But, you know, it just doesn't seem right. I know this guy's like, oh, opinions don't matter, people are full of it, whatever. You know, it does matter, buddy, I'll tell you. It does. People don't like it. They're paying a lot of taxes in this community. They trust all these people. I bet you 95% don't want the antenna, or they don't want the tower.
In some communities, the village board acts as the park board. Years ago, way before us,
Yeah.
it was split. There's a separate park district, there's a separate library, there's a separate school. There's things that intermingle, but it's their property. I can't, this board can't say anything regarding their fields or how the grass are cut or any of that kind of stuff. We don't rent out their buildings, et cetera, et cetera. They do all of that. This is a procedure and that we're following to the best of our ability. And, you know, we're gonna make some decisions, but again, I've offered some compromises here that I think need to go forward.
Time's up and it sounds
It's
like
okay.
keep up the good work.
Yes, young lady, next.
Wendy Musselman. First, I'd like to thank the comments from the board about the opinions of the board, the people. They do matter. Secondly, the meeting on May 10th, is that an open meeting where the vote will be taken?
Yes, ma'am.
So-
Everything we do is in the open.
Okay, good. I wasn't quite sure about that. And when we first moved to Westchester 14 years ago, we're right next to Mayfair. We were told that nothing would ever be built at Mayfair Park. So now that's changing. It seems that they're trying to change it. Why? And I appreciate especially the comments and what the president's trying to do is bring in other alternatives. There are other alternatives to make everyone, you know, happy, mostly everyone. We don't need all that. So thank you for your comments about the residents. The residents do matter, and the word value is very important.
Thank you, ma'am. Scotty?
Scott Breka, 1640 Stratford. Sure. B as in boy, R-E-J-C-H-A. Given the light of tonight's possible alternatives to the cell tower, I was going to ask Ms. Headley, I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but you were listing some requirements. It may have been for the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I believe one of them was alternative matters, right? Is that correct? So at the time of your staff report, we basically thought there weren't alternatives at the time. Is it safe to say now that there is the potential for alternatives, that if the board were to vote tonight, which I know they're not, that could be the basis of denial for an application? Possibly. So I commend that we're going to go look at these alternatives. If the alternative is a potential option that will solve our problem, hopefully everybody can get together and make the situation better. What's most important is that our police and fire department have the communication in the dead zone. But I wanted to clarify that in those requirements, that alternatives was one of the requirements that had to be met in order for that to be met by the petitioner.
I'm going to jump in here. That's one of the standards that the commission is supposed to consider.
Okay.
And that's in the zoning board of appeals portion of the special use ordinance.
Okay.
It's not one of the traditional special use standards,
Okay.
so,
So it's a standard for consideration by the zoning board of appeals?
yes. And it's something that I believe, based on the village president's comments, may lead to some mutual agreement by the parties. It's at least what we're going to try to explore.
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
But with respect to having to take a vote on whether it meets those standards or not, that's not happening tonight. When the vote is taken, it will be a public vote.
Great. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Scott.
Ms. Lorraine, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Sam. I'm Lorraine Kubiak, 10921 Lancaster. The other day, I was doing some business with my provider, AT&T, at their new store in downtown LaGrange on Manheim, and somehow in conversation, the rep said to me that the people in the area of the store were complaining that their service was not adequate. And they were all concerned that this new big store with all their equipment and use there would be making their situation worse. So the rep said to me, oh, we just put up on one of the towers and back some portable, I don't know the term, I would say portable equipment that has increased everybody's cell usage and everybody is happy. So there are alternatives available, like just putting some apparatus on a tower or a pole. Thank you for your attention.
Anybody else on the cell tower stuff? If not, we'll go into regular public
Yes,
comment.
the Open Meetings Act requires us to have public comment on anything that the public would desire to comment on. So anyone else
Regular
has a
public
different
comment
topic.
here now. Okay, young lady,
And
you're up.
Counsel, before that, do you want your court reporter to continue to take these items down?
No, Counselor, if you'll represent that the petitioner's application is not going to be discussed in any way further this evening, we don't need to create any further transcript.
I'm going to suggest to the board that as soon as this public comment session is over, that we move to the active agenda. We'll get the vote on those 3 items, and then we'll be done with that tonight.
I'm not looking at the agenda, the 3 items, that's not anything to do
We
with
have
us.
an ordinance with regard to the Plan Commission's recommendation on the special use. We have an ordinance with regard to the recommendation on the variation, and we have an alternative motion with regard to your appeal of the zoning board. We're going to move to table those, is what I anticipate.
I'm going to, if that's the case, I'm just going to have the court reporter stay through the votes, I understand they're just a table, but the votes that pertain.
That's
just so
what
we
I'm
have a full
suggesting. Well, you can have the court reporter maybe better use her time to stay for those votes, but perhaps she needs a break now because these people are going to be talking about other things other than the cell tower.
That's fine. We can go off the record
But
in
feel
that
free to
regard.
nudge her and tell her to get back and start.
That's fine, absolutely, we can do
taking
that.
it down.
Yeah.
Okay, young lady, you're up.
I love it when you call me young lady.
My mother taught me well.
She certainly did. My name is Mary Ann Watts. I live at 1821 South on Manheim Road. And I've been a resident for 21 years. And I have seen the alley, it's about the alleys, deteriorating over the years. And it has really gotten to be a problem. I mentioned this before, and you said that you were going to have a discussion. And we're here. This is Helen Papadakis. And we're here tonight to see if you had a discussion, and if so, what can we expect from the trustees for the Village of Westchester to do for our alleys?
In the committee of the whole meeting, and I'm going to say unfortunately because you're here for a great meeting, we have an alley program discussion going to be discussed at that point in time. So
Unfortunately.
we're going to get through our business if you're all alley people, We're gonna get through our business as best as we can.
Okay.
And then we're gonna go into a committee of the whole. And since you're here, we'll pull that up to the top of the pile.
Thank you so very much, Helen. Did you want-
Not that we don't want you to stay, but we will do that.
I'm also a resident of Westchester. I've lived here over 40 years. Yes, 41. And just like Mary outside, it's become very difficult to walk in the alley, to drive through the alley. It's terrible. My mother's 92 years old, and to try to get her in the car, if the garage is blocked or something's going on, to get her to walk, it's impossible. They used to maintain the alleys. They used to constantly fix someone, twice or three times a year during summer. We haven't seen that. About a month ago, they did come out and they did try, but really nothing. The bumps and the holes are still there. As you drive by, make sure you don't have your window open. We've gotten hit with water and dirt and rain and so on. They need to really maintain that block. That 1800 is horrible. You can't even drive through it. It's the bottom of your car. My mother uses a walker. You can't take her through the alley. You're constantly trying to walk on the side of somebody else's property. Honestly, it's really deteriorated back there.
I get it. We're gonna talk about it.
Okay, thank you.
Young lady.
Thank you. My name's Carol Jeffrey, and my husband and I own a home at 1078 Canterbury, next to the Westchester Intermediate School. I have some questions regarding the 73-unit senior housing complex, which has been proposed for construction between St. Joseph High, Westchester Intermediate School, and the park. First, could you please clarify if this structure is to be new or rehab construction, and would it be Section 8, 811, or Senior Exclusive 202 complex?
The information that we received from St. Joe, and it was just preliminary. Okay. The presentation that was made was it is going to be, at this juncture, a rehab of the existing building minus the gym and minus the brothers' room.
Okay.
The developer is looking for tax credits to put up a senior complex. They'd like it, their presentation was 55 and older. And since they're seeking tax credits from the Illinois Housing Authority, 25% or 18 units out of that 73 would be Section 8 or affordable, or whatever you want to call it. That was their proposal. So
Okay.
was there another
Yes.
question?
Yes. I'm curious as to the board's assessment of the impact that a multifamily senior complex of this magnitude would have in our single-family home community. Also, how it will affect our antiquated sewer system in an area that's vulnerable to flooding, our neighborhood demographics, home values, and the stresses that it will place on our emergency service. But most importantly, how will our children's safety be affected from the resulting increased traffic, congestion, and overcrowding between the two schools and park?
There's been no decision by this board whatsoever.
Okay.
Period. I can tell you as a 62-year resident that when I was going to high school at Proviso, there were close to 800 students at St. Joseph's with at least 200 to 250 cars there pretty much every day. Now, understandably, I'm not sure when and you moved in, but you probably moved in somewhere within the last 10 or so years where it's been a ghost town behind you, or pretty
We
close.
just moved in June.
Oh, pretty close to you. St. Joe has been trying to sell that property for 10 years. This has been the third multi-unit proposal that has crossed our desk in concept. The other two were far more denser with 3- and 4-story buildings versus the remodification of what they have. The only concept that fell apart at the last end was to have it all a field that another Catholic high school was going to lease, to buy, to do whatever, and make a sports complex back there. So at the end of the day, regardless of what went back there, there was probably going to be more traffic than you're used to, and that had been there since 1960 or so, when both those IHM and St. Joe's were built. So it's in the planning stage. You certainly will be notified via the newsletter, or you live probably within the 250-foot range of whatever, so by law you're required to be notified of anything of substance that would come, and then certainly, you know, voice your opinion. But this board hasn't indicated yes, no, or whatever. The concept was brought to us. There were some terse questions that were asked, some things that I didn't particularly care for, and certainly some things that the board didn't care for as well. But nothing has been decided whatsoever.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Does that make some sense to you?
Yes.
All right, young lady.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else in the public comment realm? If not, we will close public comments and move on to presentations. I will be brief with these. Real simple, and because of time, we have a proclamation recognizing the month of May 2016 as Bike Month, and also a proclamation April 29th, 2016 as Arbor Day. All the whereases we can dispense with, but at the Westchester Primary School on Friday, we will be planting a tree in regards to Arbor Day. And I think everyone on this board and in the audience knows the values of trees and what they do for us, not only for shade, for oxygen, but for water storage, in as much as the roots are grabbing the storm water, et cetera, that sometimes is problematic for us. For Bike Month, we just want to make sure that everyone is using good bike skills when they're riding their bikes. There are more and more people out there every day riding bicycles. And Ride Illinois, which has asked me to proclaim this as Bike Month, has indicated that there's a Mayor's Bicycle Safety Challenge that I would encourage everyone to take a look at, because you'll see what you don't know about the rules and regulations riding bicycles on the roadway. And that website will be on our next May newsletter. So we'll proclaim this with the board as of today, April 26th, not only Arbor Day, but Bike Month. Moving right along, consent agenda, approval of the record of bills ending
Sam.
for.
I thought we were doing the
We're going to
active.
go to active agenda first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Counsel, do you want your court reporter to take note of this vote? Yeah, they're going to move them up. So
Oh,
you can
I'm
get out of
sorry.
it.
I was jumping ahead of myself here.
So you need to consider, under the active agenda, an ordinance authorizing special use to allow for the installation and construction of a wireless telecommunications tower and antenna in the R1 Family Residence District. The property located at 2700 Mayfair Avenue, Westchester, Illinois, otherwise known as Mayfair Park. I believe the chair would entertain a motion to table this ordinance until the May 10th meeting.
Can we do all of them at once, Mike?
If you wish to do so.
Yeah.
We also have item B, an ordinance authorizing a variation to allow for the installation and construction of a security fence of 8 feet in height in the R1 Family Residence District for the property located at 2700 Mayfair Avenue, Westchester, Illinois, also known as Mayfair Park. And finally, matter C, which I will state in the alternative. It's a motion to overturn the Zoning Board of Appeals denial of a special use permit for the construction of a cell tower at Mayfair Park and to grant the special use permit, or in the alternative, a motion to affirm the Zoning Board of Appeals denial a special use permit for the construction of a cell tower at Mayfair Park. A motion to table those three items
So moved.
to May 10th would
Tommy?
be in order.
Second.
Celeste?
You can vote by acclamation.
All those in favor of tabling those?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, say no. And again, you're going to consult with your client and then get back to us on the timing of that, of the staying of the June date.
You're addressing Mr. Vogt,
Yes,
correct?
Chris.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
So we're-
There will not be any other discussion of this matter tonight unless somebody else comes in and it's all over and we have to tell them it is, so.
Thank you again. Back to the consent agenda. Record of bills ending 4/21/16 in the amount of $447,409.70. Is understanding we are going to table all three of the minute handouts until May 10th. Item C, an ordinance approving and adopting the annual budget beginning May 1st, 2016, ending April 30th, 2017. Ordinance authorizing the sale of surplus property in the village. Resolution approving collective bargaining agreement between the Village of Westchester and Westchester Professional Firefighters, Local 4851, International Association of Firefighters, AFL-CIO, CLC, Associated Firefighters of Illinois. Resolution endorsing the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus Greenest Region Compact. Item G, a resolution authorizing the execution of a professional engineering services agreement with Engineering Solutions Team for design and construction observation services related to the replacement of the roof at 10240 Roosevelt Road, which is the post office / fire department, in the amount of $35,000. Anybody want anything else pulled?
I'd like to see pulled, please.
C, okay. I have a question on D, so I'm going to pull it just for a second. Mike? Collective bargaining, anything? Mayor's caucus, engineering agreement? Once, twice, anybody else? Okay.
So you're voting on
A, E, F, and G.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there motion to approve A, E, F, and G?
So moved.
Nick, second.
Second.
Frank? Roll call, please.
Trustee Calcagno.
Aye.
Trustee Perry.
Aye.
Trustee Rita.
Aye.
Trustee Stecker.
Aye.
Trustee Yorkovic.
Aye.
Trustee Celestino.
Aye.
President Bowie.
Aye, motion carries. Motion is second to table the minutes until May 10th.
So moved. Second.
Who was the?
Nick.
Nick and Tommy. All those in favor of tabling that, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, say no. I'm going to jump to D, Frank, just ahead of you. Ordinance authorizing the sale of surplus property in the Village of Westchester. Is there a motion and a second for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Tom and Carl. Fast question that I had. There are three vehicles that are considered surplus. There is one pickup truck that's a 2000 model that probably has some but little value, being that it's 16 years old, that was taken in a seizure with some drug opportunity. There has been a request from the Public Works Department to possibly replace one of their older small pickup trucks with that vehicle. So I guess the question is, I think we have some dates of seizure. Is it a fact that we have to sell it off, or can we, at this particular time, since it's being offered for sale, transfer that and take it out of the surplus property and use it for a better use, because there's less mileage and certainly a better looking vehicle than they have either in Public Works and or in the mechanical in Jerry's old office or Vince's new office. Mike, do you have any opinion on that?
The police department's entitled to it now, aren't you? I don't believe there's any deadline as to disposing of it.
We do have the title for it. However, due to the seizure being drug-related, state statute says the police have to be in possession of it for 1 year, and then at that point, we can do that. So this September, if we wanted to hold it back, we would have to stay in possession of it, just let it sit till September, then it can go ahead and be used.
The village can purchase it, was what I was going to say, so. You could purchase it from the police department, but the money's gotta go then back into that fund, so.
Okay, well, yeah, that would be a way around,
Yes.
waiting for the
One
year.
way to do
right.
it.
Yeah, because this ordinance authorizes public or private sales, so.
Yeah, that's
But it
fine
would
with
have
me.
to be offered for sale for everybody.
No,
to
you
bid.
could do a
No.
private sale, as long as you're getting fair value for it, so.
Okay, so that answers our question.
Right.
So, anyone have an opinion? I'd rather keep it
Yeah.
if it's something that Robert,
They could, yeah.
I mean,
I thought it was originally not going to be because it's stick shift and all this other fun stuff.
well, the other one is stick shift that Vince has already. That was
Oh.
a seizure stick shift of years ago.
Okay.
So
Then
this has
keep
a
it.
stick shift, but it's in far better condition than what's out
Right.
there.
Yeah. keep
Anyone
it
have a
then.
reservation of pulling that from
Sounds good.
the surplus list and following the parameters that council has indicated, whether it's a purchase or we wait till September? And anyone have an issue with that?
Nope. Not at all.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second on the floor. I have to ask Mike how to do this, to pull that one out of there when he comes from the washroom. If that's not an issue, we'll pull that vehicle out of there and just have the two,
Amend that item.
yeah, amended, and just have the two ones in there and
Just the
leave that.
Denali and the Grand Prix then.
Yes. So, wait till Mike comes back, so we're doing it right. How about we do this? We have a motion on the floor for approval from Tom and Carl. Would either of you like to amend and take, oh, here, Mike's coming back. I think that's what he's gonna tell me. Mike, do we have to amend the motion to pull that one vehicle out?
I'm sorry, I had to get the court recorder, because I figured we may need that transcript someday. I believe,
Because there's Tom and Carl are the motion.
no, the ordinance already says, the village manager or her designee is authorized to sell such items at public or private sale, or convert such items into some other form that
Okay.
is useful to the village, so, but
So-
with regard to the interplay with the seizure, you need to pay some value that's gotta go back into that fund.
Fund. I got it.
So-
Okay, so there's a motion and a second on the floor for the approval as written. Roll call, please.
Trustee Carey?
Aye.
Trustee Rita?
Aye.
Trustee Stecker?
Aye.
Trustee Yorkowicz?
Aye.
Trustee Celestino?
Aye.
Trustee Calhoun?
Aye.
Trustee Perry?
Aye, motion carries. Item number D, a motion and a second to approve an ordinance approving and adoption of the annual budget, May 1?
That's C.
C, I'm sorry. May 1, 2016, ending April 30th, 2017. Place this item in discussion. Motion by
Motion.
Celeste, second by Angelo. Franklin.
I don't have too much discussion, just I wanted to pull it for a separate vote.
Oh, okay.
We've already discussed it.
Any other discussion?
Nick?
Oh, Nickel, I'm sorry.
Well, I've made my, my comments in the previous meetings, and it's just, every year, we come up with different arguments for the same thing. There's gotta be some sort of consistency, some sort of rhyme or reason as to why we come up with, a lot of these things. And, I just don't see it every year. Every year, I think we're gonna get better at it, and there's just no way to anticipate, what the argument's gonna be. One year we argue one way, and then we do the complete counter argument the following year. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. I will be voting no this evening.
As will
Okay, any other comments relative to the budget? If not, Sherby, please call the roll for an ordinance approving and adopting the annual budget, May 1, 16, April 30th, 17 for the village.
Trustee Carey.
No.
Trustee Rita.
Aye.
Trustee Stecker.
No.
Trustee Yorkwood.
Aye.
Trustee Celestino.
Aye.
Trustee Calcagno.
Aye.
President Julio.
Aye, motion carries. I just want to make a comment relative to this. So we're talking about budgets. You know, every year, you know, we go off to certain conventions and sometimes people crank us that, you know, you're not going there to learn, you're going there to do something different, and it's not only us, it's everywhere. But I was apprised of this situation that I thought I would indicate it at this particular time. That I know Janet and Maureen went to a conference and learned about the Illinois Public Benefit funding for the health insurance that I think, Tommy, you took it to the park in that, okay? And there was a cost savings involved in that because of their interaction with the Illinois Public Benefit. And the other day, I overheard a conversation between Janet and Maureen. I was eavesdropping and indicated that our current benefit for health care was gonna go up 29%. So, based on their due diligence, and they're seeking out this other company to give the same health care coverage that all of our employees and all the personnel enjoy, that we potentially saved a good amount of money in the 29% range. So, again, I just want to thank you guys for seeking them out. It wasn't something that we sought out, but it turned out to be a benefit this time, especially with as tight as this budget is. And I just wanted to thank you guys, and sorry I overheard you when you were talking about it, but I thought it was something to be noted. Item number D, a motion to receive and file the Board of Fire and Police Commissioner annual report. Was this on the cow? Do we need to do something?
Yeah, we
I don't
need to
remember.
waive the community of the whole requirement.
Is there a motion, a second, to waive the COW?
So moved.
Nick, second. Celeste? Need a roll?
By acclamation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition, say no.
The record should note that it was unanimous.
Okay, is there a motion, a second, to receive and file the Board of Police and Fire Commissioners' annual report?
So moved.
Nick, second.
Second.
Angelo? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposition? Say no. Okay, managers' report, moving right along.
I have nothing to report this evening.
Michael,
I have no-
anything for the good of the order?
No, I have no report either.
Board members, Frankie, EDC.
I have nothing new to report.
Question for you. Did the topic come up at your meeting regarding the additional people for a facade?
No,
No, okay.
not yet.
Okay. Nikki?
I think Greg's gonna address the ETSB consolidation in the cow.
Celestine?
I just wanted to thank the fire department. My daughter was in an accident on Friday, and they waited very patiently with a very upset 16-year-old till her parents got there, so thank you. You did a great job.
Carl?
I just want to thank all of those who were involved in, on April 16th, when the Village of Westchester hosted an electronic cycling event that was sponsored by the West Cook Solid Waste Agency. It was a very, very, very busy day. Normal e-recycling events that we have held in the past, we normally fill about a 26-foot truck. That Saturday, we filled 2.5 tractor trailers full of electronic recycling. We got, because this was a multi-municipal event, we've got cars and we had people bringing from everywhere. And like I said, if it wasn't for the due diligence and the hard work of all the volunteers, we could not make this event such a success. One thing regarding future recycling events, they will be held as usual on the second Saturday of each month, and through discussions with fellow trustees, the village manager, and you, Mayor Puglia, we are going to have these events for our village residents only. Can't anticipate, I mean, now that, how can I say this, we open Pandora's box and everybody knows where people can recycle their stuff, their electronic recycling, it would be an undue burden for us, for the village, as well as all the volunteers who help out. And future events will be for village residents only. We can verify that through if they come in their cars, by seeing the village sticker, or asking for, driver's license. It's just to make it, like I said, we can't overburden the village. I don't want to have any burden in cost to the village or to the people involved. As well as anything, I mean, luckily we had the one tractor trailer and we were able to put the other stuff in on the side. I don't want anything to disrupt our normal operations at that site. So we're going to advertise the heck out of it, and just to let you know, like I said, this is a service that we provide to our residents. That's all. Thank you.
Carl, not to step on yours, but
No.
thank you to the police department also for coming out that day and bailing us out. They were able to divert traffic and get it off Cermak Road there and all the way back to Wolf and 294. It got pretty bad. So thank you guys very much.
And that's one of the reasons why we're going to limit it to just our residents, so we don't have that happen again, because we don't want to put a burden on the officers on duty that day.
And you want to talk about Saturday?
This past Saturday, our spring cleanup event went very well. And once again, thank you to all the scout troops that came out. They have been consistent. Every recycling event we have, any cleanup event we have, those guys come out, the troop leaders come out and give it their all. Stand next to them and work with them is not only a pleasure but an honor. And we did pretty good Saturday. Working next to Sam is you got to keep up with him. It's exhausting. So, and then one other point too, and maybe Melissa might be speaking to this. We met with the zoning ordinances, all that kind of, looking at everything to make sure all our ordinances are up to par, up to standards and everything.
Good.
We'll be meeting again actually tomorrow.
Good.
That was it.
Thank you. Tommy, anything, my friend? Got something coming up?
Get Out and Play June 4th from 10 to 2 at St. Joe's.
At St. Joe's. Okay. Chief, anything?
Good evening, everybody. The only thing I have is a reminder about the police open house. Saturday, May 21st, so come on out, one and all, bring the kids, adults, more than welcome, and have some good times, meet some of our officers, myself, and we look forward to it.
Thank you, Chief. Second Chief.
April 13th, I was down in Springfield for Fire Service Legislative Day along with police and fire, and it seemed like every other legislative thing going on down there. Did have an appointment to meet with Representative Welch, which we had a good meeting, and I actually meet with him occasionally throughout the year up north here. I do have to say, didn't have an appointment with Senator Lightford, but she actually took a lot of time out of her really busy schedule, passed up the elevator a few times to actually stay with myself, Chief Kenny from Broadview, and Chief Pills from Hillside to talk about some stuff. And as a result, actually, we are meeting up here north this Friday to talk about some more stuff tailored to us rather than all the general legislation that's out there in the fire service at this time. I also I attended the the Fire Department Instructors Conference last week. Attended various sessions, including leadership, regional, multi-company operations, training, issues in the fire service, issues and challenges of just today's fire service, doing more with less, and community risk reduction, to name some of the ones I enjoyed. And then also this Friday, myself and the chief are meeting with St. Joe's to go over their safety plans, make sure they're up to where they need to be, especially in everything that's going on in the world today. So,
Thank you, Jimmy. Maureen?
I just wanted to add to what President Puglia was mentioning about the change in the insurance and the renewal rate. Sam did speak to the rate increase that would have been 29%. I just want to bring to the board's attention what that would have meant in dollars. That was approximately $545,000 an increase that we were facing. That's a change in services. That's a catastrophic event for our budget, what we were looking at this year. So we were so fortunate to come across that at that conference last summer. So those are just one of the ways that I'm constantly looking for ways for this village to save money. Always got my eyes open. Janet calls me the enforcer. I'm always trying to get the best deal for the village. I also wanted to mention that this is the last week that vehicle stickers are on sale at regular price. Monday they will be double. We are going to have the office open on Saturday from 8 to noon, or 8:30 to noon. And I just want to remind all residents that your stickers have to be displayed on your window of your vehicle by May 1st. I also wanted to remind department heads and board members that we are approaching our fiscal year end. May 1st will be the new fiscal year. So if anyone has any reimbursements or expenses that they need to be submitted so I can close out the fiscal year. Also in closing out the fiscal year, we were taking a look at any outstanding bills that are owed to the village, any unpaid bills that exceed $1,000. We will be filing liens for any residences or anyone that has bills exceeding $1,000 to the village.
And on that as well, I know in debt recovery, we've been putting some stuff in there, Greg. I would imagine there's some other things we could put in there if you would look at the scheme of what other municipalities are authorized to put in or what the state allows us to put in there. And, you know, that's another way to collect. A lot of times you have a lien put and you got to wait 10 years for a sale and then you stumble through it. If there's some other way to accommodate that and get that debt paid ahead of time, we could always dismiss the lien or whatever the case may be to try to do that collection. I know you've been doing that pretty well for the last couple of years. So I would ask that you look into expanding that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gregg.
Well, to forward or answer that question and move on with that request, I will take any debt that is presented to me by any member of staff as long as it's approved by the village manager, finance director, if it's finance related, that is less than 7 years. That's the only requirement. If it's a debt that's owed, there are various, I guess you'd call them indexers. So we would just notify them that it's for a parking ticket, red light ticket, fine, outstanding bill, and we put it in for that. As of today, collected $351,403. That's partly on hold. Some of the money has been remitted to us. Others is waiting for the 90-day allowance for them to protest. Just to make a note of that, this year alone, we had 1,400 people that we've collected from, and 28 people have protested. Of those 28 people that have protested, only 9 have I found, along with the adjudicator from the state, to be due a refund due to some information there. So that's all I have.
Great. Thank you. Robert.
Just want everyone to know that on our Mayfair Phase 2 project on Kensington, we've scheduled work to begin Monday, May 2nd. The completion date would be July 1. So we'll be issuing a notice to proceed to Berger Excavating.
Not the Doppler meter, the other meter at Crestwood that we had a conversation on today. Do you want to inform the board about its workability and whatever? It's all hooked up now, and it is working now. Because there was a concept that we put it in, it wasn't working, but it is working, and at this point in time, working well. Is that not correct?
That's correct. We put in a new magnetic meter. It's a master meter for us at Crestwood, and it operates within about 1% accuracy, so it's 99 point something accurate. And we think with the value of water and the cost of water, we really need to have a great deal of accuracy as we measure the water that we pump. There were some glitches when we first installed it. Things were working correctly, but the meter wasn't registering. We discovered that the way we grounded it wasn't properly, so once it was properly grounded, it works fine. So we've had it in use for about 10 days, and we're collecting data. We're also sharing that data with the Broadview Water Agency, and we're comparing numbers. We still need to collect more data before we can get a lot of statistical relevance about what it's saying, but it's measuring accurately.
Ash borer trees, are we down to the final 2 or what?
I don't have the exact numbers, but we continue.
It was like 20 last week.
Yeah, last week, and then this week, and most likely next week as well. We're continuing tree trimming and stump grinding, and we've been pushing Senate to finish because his contract is coming up, and it'll be over soon. And we're going to spend the budgeted amount that we had. We held some over for this spring so that he could finish up, and I don't know the exact count, but the goal is to get them all down.
I mean, if you look at the stumps and the restorations that our guys are doing and the amount of dirt trucks that'll be dropping here, I mean, he's had to grind 200 stumps out. And our guys repairing 200 in lickety-split time. So, I mean, it is moving quickly. So I'm happy about that as well.
Well, we had good weather. We haven't been rained out too much.
Good. All right. Thank you. Melissa.
Good evening. I just have a couple things. I met with the Prescott Square Town Home Association yesterday. Got to hear from them about some concerns that they had regarding permitting, and so I'm going to get back to them with some more information. Also, the Zoning Code Steering Committee, as Trustee Calcagno had mentioned, we're meeting tomorrow. We met about 2 weeks ago to kind of go over just the general structure of the new ordinance. We have a draft that's been prepared. So now tomorrow night is going to be the first sort of in-depth look at any of the sections. We're going to be looking at the mixed-use district, so looking at that form-based code part of the ordinance. And that's really all that I had for tonight.
Great, thank you. Ms. Sherby, anything? Nothing. Okay, I'm going to pass my comments. We had the public comments before. We need an exec.
Yes.
Okay, after our committee of the whole, we'll have an exec under 5 Ilix 122C1, discuss employment and compensation, appointment, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body. And 5 Ilix 122C2, to discuss collective bargaining matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Is there a motion and a second to adjourn our board meeting?
So moved.
Celeste and Angelo. All those in favor of adjourning the board meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition, say no. Thank you.